I feel like Ken's been the companion of mine for the last 30 or so years. I've known him for almost that long. He is quite a prolific writer, and he's written a number of books that many people that have come into the introduction of the Brahma Kumaris knowledge have had as their companions. And one of those books is New Beginnings, and the other one is Pathways to Higher Consciousness, and it's a companion book, which is a workbook. And reading those books, you get to know a little bit about Ken and the depth of his exploration and experimentation of living his spirituality in his day-to-day life. And it's very in tune with today's topic, which is cultivating self-compassion. And I just wanted to tell one story, which I'm not sure if Ken remembers, but many years ago in Newcastle, in New South Wales, I organised a lecture for Ken to do. And it was a bunch of business people who I knew fairly well. And Ken did this lecture. I cannot remember the topic, but I can remember one thing. And at the end of the program, there was a line of these women who wanted to come up to Ken and have a hug. And I was sitting there and watching it and remembering it because I knew all of those people and they'd never come up and given me a hug. And
poor Stephen.
No. Well, the thing was is that I was. What was it about that? And I think it was witnessing a male, a strong male, but who was just oozed love and oozed kindness, and they just wanted a piece of that. And what I loved about it was how Ken so humbly obliged to every hug. Can you remember that? And so Ken is real. So if this is, how many of you today is your first time coming to the Brahma Kumaris? One, two, yeah, great. Yeah, welcome. So I invite you to trust that you're in the right place. It's the right time to hear what Ken has to say and allow it to touch your heart. Over to you, Ken.
Well, I don't think I expect lineups here, though. Yeah, I remember Stephen in Newcastle. God, that was a long time ago. So we've already had our little meditation together. We can have another meditation towards the end. But this topic of self-compassion is relatively modern in a way, even though it's as ancient as the hills. Probably because of the introduction, I think it came into the vocabulary because of Buddhism, because part of mindfulness is to meditate on the compassionate heart sort of thing. And it has come into our vocabulary, I've noticed more and more. And probably we've never thought about it before. What is self-compassion? Even though we understand the concept. If someone comes to you with a problem, some friend, or even someone that you don't know, that the problem is really drastic and horrible, what do you do? What do you say to that friend? What do you say? Come on. Is everything all right? What else? Pardon? What do you need? What do you need? You tell people, no, you can calm down. It's not so bad after all. You try to help them understand the situation and try to help them out if you can. But what happens if you come to yourself with a problem? Do you say to yourself, sit down, it's okay. What do you need? Can I do anything for you? Can we sort this out? You don't need to think so much. We don't do that with ourselves. I think we're hard on ourselves more than we need to be. We should be softer. And that's, I guess, where self-compassion comes in, because even the word passion actually is not, it's really to do with the Greek root pathos. So it's empathy, is to empathetic. What is that? To be empathetic, what does that mean?
Yes.
Huh?
To be sensitive to somebody else's.
Yeah, to be sensitive to what they're going through. The pathos is what they're going through. Pathos implies some sort of a struggle, or they're not normal, or they're not in a normal state. They need external help. So you've got a pathology. It means you're sick, basically, right? Even pathology comes from the same root. So empathetic and sympathetic is to try to sort of get in the same wavelength as someone who's going through something. That's being sympathetic. Empathetic. And so what is compathetic? That word doesn't exist, but it could exist if we look at the word compassion. It means that I'm with the person going through whatever they're going through. I'm with them. Com means with. So I'm with the person going through whatever they go through. So self-compassion would be, I'm with me and understanding me, and I'm looking at the context, I'm looking at the past, present, future, I'm looking at the whole thing, and I'm seeing how I can help myself through what I need to help myself through. So first thing, we have to understand there's a difference between self-compassion and self-esteem, right? Self-esteem is another big catchword these days. There are so many courses around and books around, self-help books about increasing your sense of self-esteem, and you have to feel great about yourself and this and that. You're not so bad after all. But in fact, it's a little bit deeper than that. It's about being able to, you've got something in yourself that you see as valuable, and you've been able to activate that value, and you're actually putting it into practice. So you're seeing your value come out of you, and that increases, therefore, the way you see yourself, like esteem yourself. The estimate that you have of yourself increases. So it's different. Self-compassion is not exactly the same thing, though they probably converge. I don't think you can have really start a course in self-compassion if you don't have the self-esteem. So there is a connection, but not exactly. And when you see, that's why it's useful to see others. If someone very close to you is being diagnosed with terminal cancer, for example, and that does happen, maybe even a relative, how do you listen to them? How do you engage with them? How do you try to help them? I was recently with my brother who lives in near Wollongong, and he's a little bit crazy in a sense. Every day he rides to work on his bicycle, and he is 66 years old, rides to work. Every day of the year, even in winter, he goes for a swim. And in Wollongong in the winter, like sometimes it's 4 or 5 degrees, It doesn't matter. Every day of the year he swims, because there are lots of rock pools on the way to. It's a half an hour ride along the coast. He lives in Bulli and he works in Wollongong, which is like half an hour bicycle ride. Anyway, he stops, goes for his normal swim, and on the way out, he slips and breaks his femur, his thigh, snaps it completely. And he sort of has to crawl to the road where his bike is, gets his phone. And fortunately, his wife's a nurse, So, she could help sort it out. He got the contact with the hospital and all, and he was sorted out. The thing is that he can't work. So he can't not only not go to work, but they don't want him to work from home either because he works for Wollongong Council. And they're probably afraid that something happens, and you know how we live in a world where there's a lot of possibilities of suing, and they're afraid for any reason. But there is at home. He can't work. He can't even work from home. He's a very active person, obviously, because he, likes riding to work, even though with that age. And he's completely miserable, right? So I go and visit him, and he's there sort of pining away, moaning away. I can't work. I can't move. They just stick some pins in his leg, and he's got a lot of pain. And he said, I'm not going to take 2 painkillers a day. I'm just going to stay with one, and then I'm going to face the rest of it. So he's telling his story. And you don't say, good on you, that you deserve to fall and you deserve to break your leg, because you're stupid to be riding to work every day and jumping into a rock pool in the semi-darkness. It's a stupid thing to do. I wouldn't say that, right? You wouldn't say that, right? So you listen to him and you try to sort of get some positive aspects out of it. So you try to get him to change the way that he's talking to himself. That's what we have to do with ourselves. If I see myself in a situation where I'm complaining about anything, right? And we do have complaints. I have to change the narrative. I have to change the way that I'm talking to myself. I have to elevate my feeling for myself in a way. So I realize what I'm going through. That would be there with compassion. But I also, I start to tell myself other things. It's not so bad after all, use your time. Well, like I'd say to him, use your time better, Just because you can't work doesn't mean you have to sit around and do nothing. Get engaged, do a course. Stacks of online courses around. Don't just sit there watching, the TV. Do something with yourself. Be creative. Write down your experience. Anything to elevate your spirit. But that's what we have to do with ourselves. And you think of any complaints. Just imagine this situation. I go to a place, this was in Argentina, and with a bunch of teachers, we had a project in the 2000s called Living Values in the Workplace. So it was a program that we developed. Brahma Kumaris developed with certain educators and also with UNICEF, a program that we ran in the whole world. And in Latin America, it was very successful. I think just in Brazil, we reached about 3 million kids with that project. Because the idea was to show the teachers how they could work with the spiritual values or human values with the kids. So instead of teaching values to the kids, we showed the teachers how they could work with. So there were different age groups, kindergarten and primary school age, then adolescents, like that, different age group activities for teachers with children. And it really was a great success. And so I was there with a bunch of teachers in Argentina, near Buenos Aires. We had a retreat center near Buenos Aires, and this place, they set up a big marquee, and they were doing this program there. And there were about 120 teachers, maybe, yeah. And I've got the whole presentation. I'm going to explain the whole thing to them. And these are the steps. And obviously you had to have a PowerPoint presentation to go through step 1, step 2, step 3, like that. everything was organized and nice, and the lovely projector wasn't working. You know, so what do? Everything you're going to say is on there, right? On a PowerPoint demonstration, and projector's not working. And no matter what we did, it didn't work. It didn't work, you know. And it was, so I thought, well, how else could I show them about all of this? Like to impress upon them the need for maybe playing games with kids so that different values could be elucidated, that you know, they could be sort of clarified and brought out. So I thought, you know, looking around the room, I thought, you know, what complaints do people have about life? That would be the starting point. How could you change the language related to complaints? And everyone has complaints. Do you have a complaint about anything or anyone? About the government, about the, you know, about your house, about your street, about your neighbors, about the traffic, about your work, about time? Do you have any complaints at all? Yeah? Yeah? One or two? What's your favorite one? That's what I asked him. What's your favorite complaint? What do you see yourself saying a lot? Noise. Yeah. Who has sensitive hearing? I do. You know, I the slightest noise wakes me up. So I complain about noise, yes. What else? What other things do you complain about? What do you complain about? You put your hand up. What do you complain about? Pardon? One of your relationships is not working properly. That's interesting. It's like a broken machine, is it? It's like your fridge is not working. Okay. My husband's not working. my child is not working. Okay. Fix it. Okay. What else? Huh? Children. Do they misbehave? Who is talking about children? What about children?
The gaps between my expectations and what they do.
Do you recognize that one? The gap between our expectations and what they do. That's probably the cause of your needing to fix up a relationship. You have an expectation that's not happening accordingly. Who complains about not enough time to do what you have to do? Not enough cooperation from others, maybe. Yeah. What about the traffic? Who has to do a commute? Yeah. Well, I was talking to Archie and Ashish when they were working in Melbourne. They had a commute, and the total was 3.5 hours every day to get to their work. 3.5 hours. Well, you know, that means 17.5 hours a week in the traffic. So instead of complaining about the traffic, you should make use of it. No, listen to an interesting podcast or, you know, something, or that you may meditate maybe, but don't sit there in the traffic complaining about it. It's a reality. Anyway, everyone in that group of teachers had a complaint. So I wanted to make it into a game to show them how to get out of it using values, right? And I said to them, okay, in the room, there were about 7 distinct complaints. I don't have enough time. My relationships are not cooperating with me. There's too much noise, that sort of thing, the traffic. So I told them, okay, get into groups 7 groups, so 100 and so divided by 7 is about 15 per group. And I told each group to invent a song about their complaint. Well, they're teachers, they love games, right? Or they're there to understand how to play games with kids. And it ended up being better than a PowerPoint presentation anyway. So okay, invent a song related. I don't have time and the traffic's bad and my relationships are not working. Okay. The damn cell phone. Anyway, they made their song, and I told them to pick a melody that was a popular one so that they can easily sing it. They're just to figure out some lyrics for the song and train those lyrics, go through it a few times, and then sing it to the whole group. So when they were ready, I got each group to sing the song about their complaint. It was so funny. You can imagine it was like a comedy, really. And everyone was laughing. Everyone was laughing when they did their song, the song about I don't have any time. They made some interesting lyrics. The ones that don't have good relationships also had their song, and the whole thing is happening. So each one sang a different song, right? Because each one had chosen a different melody. And then I said, okay, everyone sing the song at the same time. All of the 7 groups, in a very loud voice, sing your song at the same time. So you can imagine 7 different songs being sung at the same time. What do you reckon? The people that had problem with noise were already freaking out. It was a cacophony, just like, it was amazing. But I said, you look like the world is. The world is exactly what you were doing. The world is divided into people complaining about their lives, complaining about their relationships, complaining about what's going on for them. Complaint, complaint, complaint. But is it real? Is that real? When you say I don't have enough time, is that the problem, really? What's the problem? Pardon? You're doing too much or expecting too much. I don't have enough time. What could be there? I don't know how to prioritize. I don't know how to put order into my life. But is that the problem? I don't know how to have focus. Is that the problem? I don't know how to discipline myself. Is that the problem? No, you have to go deeper. You don't discipline yourself because you don't love yourself, isn't it? You don't look after your time. You don't look after your life, therefore, because you don't love yourself. I asked them to get to the conclusion. I didn't do it. I told them, ask the question why a few times and see if you can get to the root cause. My relation, I've got difficult relationships. Is that the problem? Is it? Why do I have a difficult relationship? Maybe my expectation is too big, but why do I have, unreal expectations? Because I don't know the other person. Why don't I know the other person? Because I've never taken it serious enough. I've never really understood the nature of this relationship. And that's why there are problems. So any complaint that you have, you can get to the source of it just by asking a few why questions. Why this? Why this? Why this? And then you get to the root cause. Why does heavy traffic bother me? Because, I'm not losing time. Every day I'm getting 3.5 hours in the case of the couple that told me about their life in Melbourne. Every day I get 3.5 free hours to do whatever I want. I can meditate, I can I can listen to a course, I can improve my intellect, I can improve my understanding of the world. I can make the best use of my time. Otherwise, every day it will be like a car, carrying the cross. And it's not useful. So I can make better use of my time. I can make better use of my life. I can make better use of I can make better, not use, that's the wrong word, but I can enjoy better my relationships than I am if I see certain things, if I go into depth, because if I want to improve, and this is the whole thing about self-compassion, I have to change my narrative. I have to change the way I talk to myself. I have to change my excuses, because excuses, let's be honest, they are lies. Excuses are lies that I tell to get out of something, to get away from something, to get free from someone. I know in Brazil they use the phrase God willing a lot. It's not exactly like that, but if it is God's will, they use that phrase a lot. So, and also in Latin and other Spanish countries also. So if someone says to you, "I'll see you tomorrow if God wills it," that's very common to say. But when they say that like that, you know that they're not going to show up. Isn't it? "I'll see you tomorrow if God wills it." Okay, they're already setting up to blame God. I don't know if they do that in the English world. They don't use that so much. But they use that. They use that often when they don't know something. They will say, "Only God knows." That at least they say that in English, right? You're going through a complicated situation, it's a complicated sort of description of something, and then you end up by saying, "Only God knows how to sort this one out." But you're blaming God for he's the one that has to explain it to you if he's the only one that knows, right? Or they say in English anyway, they do say, "Thank God. Thank God for I don't know what. Thank God for I don't know what." And really? Is he aware of what you're going through that you would thank him? Probably not. But anyway, this language that we use to tell ourselves about things, to explain to ourselves about why things happen, is probably not real. And that's where self-compassion comes in. I have to change my narrative about things that are going on. Most people's narratives are very self-centered. What's the most popular word in your dictionary? I. Even in the dictionary of your thinking, isn't it? I this, I that, my this, my that, I, my. And so you end up doing circles around yourself, right? You stay hidden or trapped inside your own head while your life is going on. There's a couple of seats here. Oh, yeah, there's also a couple of seats there. Yeah, okay. Good. So in a way, we have to sort of expand the way to expand our consciousness is to go beyond the limitations of I and mine, basically. And we have to include other things. If I want to see something properly, which is the implication of being, if I want to be self-compassionate, it means, first of all, I have to see myself, the self, right? But in its true light, not in my sort of biased perception, but I have to see myself as I truly am. Then I can help myself. If I'm still insisting on a sort of a narrow vision of myself, I can only help me to the extent of my narrowness. Yeah? You get me? So I have to sort of look at myself, okay, and also others. Then we do, if we are gracious, we give people a bit of space, right? That person's maybe acting up terribly now, but if I go into the past a little bit, I can understand why they've got to that stage. What could have led to them being like that? If I look at a bit, give them a bit of past. Then if I look at their future, if they continue like this, the consequences won't be good. So let me be gracious enough to give them a future. And so I'm seeing past, present, and future, not just the present, how terrible they are, how badly they acted, how wrongly they spoke. I'm just seeing the whole picture. And then I can adjust to their behavior. But I should do the same with myself. I shouldn't. One of the problems is that we make some mistake and then we make a mistake about the mistake. That means I start to blame myself. I start to punish myself. I start to think how terrible I am, how badly I spoke, how badly I acted. I'm terrible, terrible, terrible. And I feel I diminish myself in my own eyes. But if I'm gracious with myself, which self-compassion implies, well, let me see my story, These things were happening. Probably I've been stressed out because of so many things. Probably, I became a little bit impatient because the anxiety has been growing because I don't know why. And that's why I did that or said that in that particular way. And I know that if I continue like that, it won't be good. They've done studies on compassion and its effect on the brain. I wrote down the hormone that oxytocin. It's a hormone, a feeling good hormone that we produce when we're compassionate. Probably serotonin and dopamine also are there. But I do, when I'm compassionate, I produce feeling good hormones like, I can't hardly pronounce it, oxytocin. You ever heard of that one? Yes? Okay. You're a doctor, are you, or a nurse or something? No. Okay. So if I am compassionate with others, I produce this. What about when I'm compassionate with myself? Would I not feel good? When I have another thing that's connected with compassion is kindness, right? When I'm kind to others, it creates a sort of a ripple effect, doesn't it? Kindness sort of is contagious. People, wow, that was a very kind thing you did. They feel good because you did something kind. How do you feel if you do something kind? And what about if you're kind to yourself? Gentle with yourself? What happens? Definitely you start to, grow out of whatever has been bothering you. So we have to start to use self-compassion sort of consciously to identify what is good in us, to realize the error of our ways perhaps, and be committed to not going down that path again, to change the narrative that we have with ourselves. Because there are two narratives, basically. There's one that's connected to the limited self, and there's a song in Brazil that says, you know, I was born like this. This is a very popular song. I was born like this, and I grew up like this, and my name is so-and-so, and I'm always going to be like this. It's a pretty depressing song. But that's the song that a lot of people sing. I was born like this. I grew up like this. This happened when I was a kid. My parents got divorced. I suffered. And, you know, this happened and then that happened. Went to school. It was difficult. I remember a woman who came to me and I was in Sao Paulo and she came to me and she said, you know, started to tell her sob story. I've been having, you know, I left home, you know, upstate because my parents were very difficult people. And I came here to the state capital, Sao Paulo, and I studied dentistry. It was so difficult. But finally I got through it and I set up a clinic with some of my fellow students. And it was so difficult working with them. And the owner of the place that we rented was so difficult. Everything we tried to do was so difficult. And even the owner of the apartment where I live was so difficult. And she must have used the word difficult about 15 times in 10 minutes of talking. And I said to her, you know, in the story of your life, do you consider yourself to be a difficult person or an easy person? She said, no, I'm really difficult. So I said, have you ever thought that the difficult person in the story that you tell is you and not always other people? She said, no, I've never thought about it. Look at your language. You use the word difficult 15 times in 10 minutes. And then you said, I'm a very difficult person. So where does all of this difficult come from? She said, oh, no, you know, never thought about that. Yes, of course. So I said to her, the next time you feel yourself with the urge to say difficult, that such and such a thing is difficult, just change the word in the middle and say, this situation is extremely different. Not difficult, different. Just different. I'm always in different situations. Why do I make them difficult? And why do I make things difficult for myself? It's actually it's because I don't love myself. It's because I don't have that self-compassion that I should. You know, it's not difficult. It's a different situation. That's all. Let me adjust myself differently then. And then I can be compassionate with myself. Don't make everything difficult. Oh, so-and-so is difficult. So this situation. You are invoking difficulties if you think that everything's difficult. But if you're an adventurer, it's good to be in front of different situations. Well, this is nice, this is different, this is great. What do they say? Variety is the spice of life. So more variety, not more difficulties. But that will happen if you have a positive vision of yourself. So I said that self-esteem and self-compassion are different, but there's definitely convergence. It means I have to have a good attitude towards myself, and then I can get along with others. You know, I told this story the other day. I had a friend here in Australia. I don't know where he is these days, because I left Australia. I've lived overseas since 1979, you know, so I hardly speak English these days. So I'm sorry if I make mistakes. But I had a friend here. he had been married 3 times, and he had a sort of a string of girlfriends besides that. And it was basically because he was very hard to get on with, you know, and he recognized that he was a difficult person too. So his self-definition is I'm a hard person, so I can understand that I'm hard to get on with. At least he accepted that. But he wouldn't change that. And in the time being, he became a very successful businessman. Of course, he started in the construction industry, and he started with a small company, and then he bought another one similar, and then he bought a third one similar, and he amalgamated all of the 3 into one. And so meanwhile, he's growing in his business, but at the same time, his personal life is a disaster. Because he had 1 child with each of those women. One lived in New South Wales, one lived in Queensland, the other lived in Victoria. So they're living in 3 different states. His 3 children, they're probably grown up now with kids, so grandchildren are there. And besides the cost that he had to sort of, there was some sort of alimony involved, I believe, and he had to pay something to those 3 women. And so it was costly for him, and in terms of time and in terms of money. And how do you divide yourself in 3 different states, especially when the kids are small? Anyway, I did tell him at the time that it'll be less costly for him to change his attitude than to change his wives. And he, of course, didn't listen. But change, think about it. Don't change your place of residence. Change your attitude towards it. Don't change your relationship. Change your attitude towards it. Change the way you see it. Change the way you see yourself in it. Change all of those things. But that should be the last resort, to change the thing itself. People change jobs and they end up going through the same situations that they did in the previous job. They change cities and they end up going through the same situations they went in their previous place. Change relationships, but they end up having the same problems with the new partners. Better to change attitude. Change the way what's an attitude? It's the way you see something. The way you adjust yourself according to the way you see something. So if you are truly self-compassionate, that should be the first step. What do I need to change in myself so that I can better interact with others? Instead of punishing myself and punishing others by my not so great attitude, why don't I have a look at these things? Why don't I try to see what I have to do to live better with myself and with others and with the world around? Then everything's easier. Because if I don't change, I change everything except the attitude, I actually don't change anything. And I'm going to face the same things. If I have to learn something in this school of life, I will have to learn it. I will have to go through the lessons. So maybe I've changed the classroom, but it's the same lesson, right? Maybe I've changed the teacher, but I still have to learn that lesson. One way or the other, I have to learn what I have to learn. So why not be compassionate with myself about the things that I need to learn? And why not, in that self-compassion, teach myself what I need to learn? What do you need to know? That should be the question. What do I need to know here? What is this thing teaching me? What is the lesson here? And sometimes the lesson is so screechingly obvious that we don't see it, you know. It's like life has a series of signboards saying, do this, do this, do this, and we don't see it. It's like the traffic lights are green, but I'm thinking that they're red. Maybe I'm colorblind, you know. But what happens if I crash through the red lights, even though it's a green light? What could happen? May not happen, but it could easily happen if I go through the red lights. So let me see the signs around me. What is life telling me at the moment? And to do that, I have to be compassionate with myself, because I have to see what's happening around me. Everyone tells me that I have to slow down, for example, but I'm not seeing the slow down sign. And then, you know, person has a heart attack soon after. And everyone at the funeral says, you know, we told him to slow down. I must have told him 300 times to slow down, but he didn't. And there he is, finished. So what is life telling me to do? In order to recognize that, I have to have self-compassion. Yeah. So I'm going to sort of open up. If there are any questions now, and I don't guarantee that I know the answer, but if you've got any questions, you can ask. Or if you've got any comments, you can say. Yeah. Wait. Yeah, I think there are some people online watching, so they would like to hear you. Closer.
We forget compassion towards others. I draw that line. We're not very selfish, but you know, it's helping both of us.
Sorry. There's two buttons. We have one button on, now the second button.
Okay, repeat the question and people can hear you.
So sometimes we are too self-compassionate towards ourselves, but then we are not thinking about others. But then where do we draw that line where we are not too selfish, but you know?
It's a good question. I think the line is drawn when we're actually self-centered and we're using the language of self-compassion. That, you know, I'm too attentive to myself and my own needs, and not at all attentive to the needs of others. So I'll get out of balance, actually. So if I'm really and truly self-compassionate, it's because I've been compassionate with others too. It's not possible to have true self-compassion if I'm fighting with everyone else. It won't work. So well, if it's like that, it's not even self-compassion, it's self-centeredness. I'm selfish to the extent that I don't see the needs of others. Or I'm too unselfish that I only see other people's needs and I don't look after myself. So it's not a sin to serve yourself if I'm serving others at the same time. If I'm just serving myself and everyone else can go to hell, that's of course another extreme. But I probably would feel more balanced if I have the balance between compassion for the self and for others in equal proportions. I would probably feel that my life is quite balanced. That it's okay to be at work, it's okay to be in the street, it's okay to be at home, it's okay to be in the supermarket, it's okay to go voting. Today, for example, if you have to vote, all of those things, you'll feel that nothing is a burden, nothing is a pressure, because you feel quite balanced. But if you're just looking after yourself and not your relationships and not the people around you, then you yourself will feel out of balance. You yourself will feel that there's something missing, something wrong. So balance is the way you can check. Anyone else?
Hello. So meditation is a key in the, or part of that practice, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that just now, actually.
Okay.
Anyone else before we go ahead? Okay, can we go ahead then? Everyone else is content? You go ahead? Okay. So meditation is actually the key between my inner world and the outer world. It helps me to adjust. Meditation helps me to improve my self-narrative. What do I tell myself about myself? Because what I'm doing in meditation is I'm reminding myself, and that's probably, if you use the word reminding yourself rather than the word meditating, you've probably got it right. You remind yourself that your true nature actually is a spiritual one. I am a spiritual being going through this human existence and not a human being looking for a spiritual one. I am this conscious being moving this otherwise inanimate body. If I were not here, the body would be dead. In other words, if the conscious energy, the soul were not here, what's speaking to you now is not my mouth, right? I, the spiritual being, the soul, am using my mouth to communicate. And who's listening? It's not your ears. You, the souls, are using your ears to listen to what I'm saying. So it's one soul using a body to talk to other souls through their bodies. And so we're all maybe connected at that level, for sure. So meditation reminds me of these realities, because there's a reality behind the superficial stuff. What's being said, who's doing what, and what the actions are. There's a spiritual reality behind everyone sitting here. So, hello, everyone. And meditation reminds me of that. Meditation reminds me of another dimension to things that we don't usually bring into our lives much, because there's a connection beyond here. And when people pray, they're trying to reach that other dimension somehow or the other. It doesn't matter what religion you are. When people close their eyes, whether they're trying to send themselves when they meditate or pray. So meditation reminds me of that other dimension to things. Who am I and what am I doing here? And what my connection is beyond here. Meditation reminds me of that. So basically what I'm doing when I meditate is I'm reminding myself of those things. That's why better to use the word remember than to use the word meditate. I remember who I really am or what I really am. And I remember my connection with the divine dimension of things. So let's have some meditation now, just to finish off. Just sit nicely. A little bit less of music, just very, very soft music. Of course, you don't really need music to meditate, but it's nice. So in first step, you just sort of pay attention to what's going on around you. You can hear the music in the background, you can hear my voice, you can hear the sound of the traffic outside. don't need to close your eyes, you can keep your eyes open. And therefore you're aware of the shapes and the colors around you, people around you. You're aware of maybe the temperature, your own breathing. Maybe you can hear your own heartbeat if you're lucky. So you're very aware of the moment. And because you've stopped jumping around, you sort of sink into your natural state. Of peace. And you remember, I am a peaceful being. In this state, I also feel very stable. There's nothing really shaking me anymore. I feel quite content. I'm not desiring anything at the moment, just content that I have enough. So I experience my deep state just by letting it pull me to itself. I see myself just like you're sitting on your seat. Try to visualize a sort of a subtle seat behind the eyes, in the middle of the forehead, where actually you are mentally sitting, where you're just observing things from. So just think that I'm this tiny conscious being. I'm in this body, I give life to the body, and actually I give life to everything I do through it, all of my roles and activities. I also give them life, but I'm actually this tiny conscious being otherwise, very peaceful, very calm, very stable. And I remember this. I remember that I'm the soul. And I have a body, not the other way around. And I remember that one beyond here, the one that everyone tries to remember, the one they call God or Allah or Jehovah or Shiva or the Great Spirit, so many different names according to the traditions. But I remember that divine one, that supreme one, and there is some connection there too. I remember the connection. Well, let's say that one is like the big friend, the father, the mother. So let me remember that connection. And even that, because that one is the most stable being in the universe, if I'm connected with that one, how do I feel? That one is the most peaceful one in the universe. So if I'm connected, how do I feel? And if that one is the most compassionate one in the universe, how do I feel towards others and towards myself? just enjoying that break away from things here, and knowing that I can just recreate that experience whenever I want to. I come back little by little, I open my eyes more, and I'm back to this room. Okay? Good?